We'll begin momentarily. Welcome to the Hudson Valley Chapter's 2024 October meeting, Political Elections for Project Managers. Housekeeping. Please use the chat for questions, comments, and to participate in activities. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on PMI HVC's YouTube channel. And please ensure that you are on mute. Greetings. My name is Jasmine T. Clark, and I am the VP of Professional Development. So tonight's agenda, we'll have some welcome and announcements. We'll have a unity exercise, and we'll have our guest speaker, Schaefer Gaston. So now for our announcements, this was our second annual family social event. Kudos goes out to the event planning subcommittee. We had a lovely fall morning at the Dubois Family Farm in Highland on Saturday, September 28th. We had giveaways and prizes. Thank you to all that supported the event, and more to come from HVC in 2025. Volunteers needed. Do you have strategies to increase HVC's social media presence? Would you like to facilitate a chapter meeting? Do you have a unique skill that the Hudson Valley chapter could benefit from? HVC is always looking for members to volunteer. Be the change that you want to see. We also have chapter leadership volunteers needed. These are board positions. We have the VP of Finance and also the VP of Professional Development. If you're interested, the contact information for the VP of Professional Development and the VP of Finance is on the screen, and you will get a copy of this after the presentation. October is National Bullying Prevention Month, Italian Heritage Month, National Cookie Month, and Adopt a Shelter Dog Month. So make sure you go out and you enjoy October. Welcome to Hudson Valley's newest members. Eric, welcome to the family. Congratulations to the Hudson Valley's newest project management professionals, Amanda, Tara, and Michael. Congratulations. And congratulations to Sabrina for her anniversary of membership. Thank you so much for your membership, Sabrina. And we have a ton of renewals. You could be a member at any PMI chapter, but you chose the Hudson Valley chapter. Thank you, Brian, Christine, Giovanni, Jennifer, John, Kiara, Linda, Melissa, Maurice, Melvin, Michael, Ruth, Sabrina, Timothy, and Valerie. Thank you for your chapter dues. Now for this exercise, I would like everyone to use the chat. What is your favorite spooky Halloween movie? Okay, I had Schaefer said Halloween. Which Halloween? Oh, Gary said Halloween 1978. Nightmare Before Christmas. Okay, the first one. Okay. I was actually gonna say it's not really a spooky movie or Halloween, but I like Twilight because it's vampires and werewolves. Don't kill me for that. Any others? The first one it counts. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for validating that, Eddie. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Schaefer Gaston, who is a PMP holding member of the PMI Upstate New York chapter, where he currently serves on the board of directors. He has held many professional roles, including U.S. Navy submarine officer, nuclear operations instructor, maintenance planner, and engineering manager. and has never once been fired full-time, once been hired full-time to work on a political campaigns. He believes that government that works best is the one that engages with the most people, and that PMs have a unique skill set to help make that happen. Wow. Thank you so much. And now I'll send it over to Schaefer.
All right. Thank you very much, Jasmine. I'm going to go through the screen sharing process here, courtesy of Microsoft Teams. It only takes 5 clicks and 30 seconds, which is a lifetime. All right, so now everybody should be able to see my presentation. All right, so this is specifically for PMI Hudson Valley chapter. So if you want to copy this or distribute it, talk to them. So political elections for project managers, or how you can make a difference in your community. Again, Jasmine, thank you for that introduction. So I have a bachelor's in engineering, I have an MBA, I have a PMP, I have a green belt, right? So I'm very much, I never studied political science formally or marketing or anything like that. I was a submarine officer, been a project manager for maintenance planning, been an engineering manager, recently R&D director. And as said in the introduction, right, nowhere in there have I been employed full time as a campaign manager or a political analyst or anything like that. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll realize that you're all just the same level as I am, and you can be just as involved and effective in your communities. All right, so when I say politics, right, so especially this time of year, that's kind of a charged term. People think of politics, they think of national issues. They think of the things that they're seeing on national news, in the newspaper, ads, things like that. And everybody hates it, right? Everybody hates their political party, just not as much as they hate the other guy's political party. No one likes Congress. Somehow Congress has a approval rating that's sometimes in the single digits, and yet they keep getting reelected. When I say politics, I mean local stuff, the local issues. Your congressional representative does not care about the pothole that took out your tire on the way to work this morning. And when I say they don't care, I mean it's not that they don't care, but it's not on their radar. It's not a thing. You'll write a letter to their office and you'll get a response like, well, last year, Senator Whitehead sponsored a bill for a $1.5 billion infrastructure outlay in New York State. It's like, that's great, man, but that didn't fill the pothole. They don't care about your local town's zoning ordinances. It's not a national thing. It's a local thing. And that's what affects us in a lot of the day-to-day stuff. What can you do with your property? What can't you do with your property? How well is your school district or your library district serving you? Do you have fire coverage? Is your fire coverage costing you too much? Do you not have fire coverage? This is all done at the local level. And those are really the issues that I'm talking about when I say being a campaign manager or being campaign staff. So I'm going to have to do, because of the way Teams works, I'm going to have to switch back and forth, so pardon my hand movements. Someone guess how many elected offices are there in the United States of America? And I'm going to call out Eddie for no, you don't get to answer. So, by the way, I apologize, everyone. I brought Eddie in. He's a ringer. He's basically could probably do this presentation better than I could. So, thanks, Eddie. So, somebody else. How many elected offices do you think there are in the United States? Plus or minus 10%. Anybody want to guess? Type in the chat. All right, I'll give it 5 seconds, and then I'll let you answer, Eddie. All right, go ahead. How many elected offices do we have?
I think Zach is probably closest, right? It's on the order of 6,000, 8,000, something like that.
Oh, in the entire United States, elected offices, all elected offices?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, wait, no. Okay. I guess I don't know.
All right. There are approximately 515,000 elected offices of some type or another in the United States, right? These aren't people who are flying off to Washington. These aren't even necessarily people in your state capitals, right? These are the people who control whether or not the sidewalk in front of the playground gets paved. These are the people who do or do not buy a new fire truck. These are the people who do or do not take out the debt necessary to buy a new fire truck, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is the local stuff. This is your local issues, your local politicians. Okay, so now that I shocked everybody, so the objectives: one, broadly describe how local government works and its importance. Two, help you understand reasons for low voter turnout. Three, translate project management concepts to campaign concepts. Four, outline a campaign as a project. And the most important one that I want everybody in this presentation to take away is provide the confidence to help electoral efforts in your local community. You have the skills. That's what I want you to take away from this. Okay. Voter turnout. We all complain about voter turnout. We all say, oh, nobody shows up to vote. But then somehow you see lines every 4 Novembers going around the block for everybody coming out to vote. So let's go with the last presidential election. Somebody give me an over-under what the percentage turnout was for the 2020 general presidential election. Any guesses? Type in the chat or just say it out loud. So maybe my chat's not working. Is somebody typing stuff in the chat and I'm just not seeing it?
Yeah, so we have 35%, 40%, 60%, less than 10%, 75%. So
Okay. Thank you for doing that. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm presenting, it won't let me see it. So the 75% was close, a little optimistic. It was actually 65% in New York, which was about actually what it is with the country. So that was the presidential election, right? And by the way, that was the largest voter turnout of any election in American history to that point. This one might be greater in 2024. We won't know for a little bit. Okay. So now let's take it down out of the presidential. Let's talk about the gubernatorial. 2022 New York general election. So the governor of our state, midterms, Congress, a lot of local and regional offices, every state assembly and state senator position was up. That had a whopping turnout of 45.9%. Okay, so we're already at less than half. Let's go with the 2023 New York general election. Now, if you don't think you could have voted in 2023 because you were living somewhere in New York where you couldn't vote, you were wrong. There was at least a state Supreme Court election for every municipality, every town and county. You had someone you could vote for. There was a contested election in your state. The turnout in 2023, any guesses? Jasmine, I'm going to have to ask you to read it out of the chat for me. Let's see. What do we think our 2023 general first Tuesday in November election was?
we have 35%, 12%, 23.4%. Really, Eddie?
23.4%, Eddie. 28%. So you were a little bit off. That was a good guess. That was a good guess.
Very good.
So let's look at this pattern, right? every 4 years, that's the big one. That's where all the advertising is. And then every 2 years, how does this affect me? And then 2023, well, does the state Supreme Court really affect me directly? No. Does it matter? It will, for reasons that I will go into. Let's talk about school boards. Okay, this one is near and dear to my heart. School board races don't occur in November. In New York, they all occur in May, so that's good. They're all at the same time, so no matter where you live in New York State, they're the same. School boards are a pretty unique thing in America. They don't exist the same way in Europe or Asia. They're independent of what we consider the general government, especially in New York, where, for example, you can have as many as 20 different school districts per county. They're very localized. They have the power to raise revenue from property taxes. They have the power to take out bonds, which then commits the district to paying back that money that they have to get from somewhere. They then go on to spend this money. In many communities, they are one of the largest expenditures of tax dollars. They're not just K through 12 schools, they're parks, they're adult programs, there's infrastructure. There's a lot there. It's a big deal no matter where you live.
Now, in the city, some like the city of Poughkeepsie and the city of Beacon, I don't think they vote for them. They're appointed, aren't they?
There might be a couple that are appointed, but if they are appointed, they're going to be appointed by elected officials that exist
Right.
outside of your county or city municipality. In New York, outside of the city, New York City, all the school boards are actually independently done. And look, now my chat comes up. This is great. I just needed someone else to talk, I guess. Thank you, Judy. So at any level, you're going to have an election for how the school board gets into play. So here's my question: with all of that, with all of the power that school boards actually have, what do we think the turnout rate is in New York State for school board elections, which, by the way, are also the budget elections? So even if there's only 3 candidates for 3 positions, there's still a budget to vote on where you get to say, yes, I like this, or no, I don't like it, do it again. Give me a plus or minus 3% on what do you think the turnout was for the school board elections in New York State this year?
Ten 10%. That brings up your chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to load the chat with Microsoft Teams. Let's see what we get.
Can you see the chat?
Nope, I don't know why it's not doing that. That's
Okay, so we have 20%, 10%, 18%, 5%, 3%, 45%, and another 10%.
all right. I'll give it to the 5% and the 3%. Nationally, 1.8 candidates per office, and the 2024 New York State turnout was 4.2%. Okay, so why am I telling you all this? I'm not trying to depress you. I'm trying to tell you that the barriers to entry for a potentially successful candidate that can make a difference are very low. It doesn't take a lot of votes to win outside of these big national things, and therefore it doesn't take a lot of money or a lot of volunteers to win. It is achievable. I'll also go ahead and further motivate you when you get, so many of us are turned off by national politics, but consider the congressional districts in which federal representatives get elected in are set by state legislators. State legislatures are in turn generally filled with people who got their start in county or local government. So the people you elect today will become the people who set the rules at the state tomorrow, who will then determine who actually makes the federal policy. So it really does go all the way down from those potholes all the way to the top. And it is very low. So once again, not trying to shame anybody, but I do want to make sure by the end of this you understand what we're leaving on the table by not getting involved. So, like local government, right? Like I said,
One
there's
question I have is, do you have
yes.
any breakouts by age? I mean, because my feeling is that the older people tend to vote more. I mean, at least in the school board, because they're complaining about their taxes.
That would generally be true. Generally speaking, the older you are, the more likely you are to vote, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's it's not just a generational thing because it's consistent year over year, decade over decade. It's not that the silent generation always voted and then millennials said we don't care about politics. It's millennial voting rates have gone up year over year for the last 20 years, and Gen Z rates are pretty low. My prediction is in 50 years, Gen Z rates are going to be about what the rates of boomers and silent generation are today. Why? You're more informed, you're more rooted in the community. Like you said, they're complaining about their taxes. A lot of people in their 30s don't really have a concept of it, which is why I want to go over this, right? They don't understand, like, what is it? If you're moving apartments every 2 years, why do you care who your town council is? You might not even know what town you technically live in. That happens a lot that I found when I'm canvassing. So what is local government? You got town councils, your county legislatures, which can be arranged in a plethora of ways, even within New York State, your school and library boards, fire commissioners, zoning authorities are elected in some places, highway superintendents, assessors, other school officials, health services, like all of these things are either elected or the programs are set by, and the constraints on those programs are set by people who are elected at the local level. So it's like I said, it's over 500,000 elected officials in the United States that set all these policies that affect you literally on the street level, literally at the local level. The stuff in your yard is set by these local authorities passing legislation. So here's a little breakdown, just so everybody understands where the money comes from for counties, state, whatever. This is from the New York State Association of Counties. This is a list of local revenue sources for all of the counties, towns, municipalities, fire districts, and school districts. So when we look at this, we see that 14% of the money comes from sales taxes. Well, if you live in a community and you buy things, that's your money. You have a stake in that. 42% is from property taxes. So if you live in a community, whether you own or you rent, that's your money. That is money coming from you. So these local offices right there with those two numbers control over half of the income that they're taking in, which comes directly from the people living in those communities. And then there's some other charges for services, other sources of revenue, state and federal aid, which is also set by legislation, but legislation that's outside the local level. Local level. About a quarter of that is from state and federal aid, and then from other sources. So it's being funded by taxpayers. It's being funded by voters. Do we have anybody who lives? So this was tailored for upstate New York originally, and then I rearranged some things. Do we have anybody living in Dutchess County in the audience? And I'm going to ask you to speak up. Okay, great. Judy, what do you think your county, just your county's budget was set by your county legislature for this past year? Hey, give me a number.
Couple million?
What's that?
A couple million?
A couple of million. So we're going with a couple million for Dutchess County. So the Dutchess County 2024 budget was $599 million.
Wow.
That's property taxes, sales taxes, all of those sources of revenue. And then it gets spread out amongst all of these different appropriations, right? And I don't know what goes into the different things exactly. There's a great breakdown on your website if you want to know. The average New York county, once again, county, not school board, not cities, towns, or villages. County expenditure per capita, $2,000. So when you elect or choose not to participate in the election of your local district, town, however it's set up, county legislature, you're just giving up your voice, in that regard for $2,000 worth of services, infrastructure, tax rebates, wherever you want it to go. So it adds up. These are large things. These are large decisions that get made by people who, once again, are getting elected with 20% of the electorate, 10% of the electorate coming out to vote. So there's a huge opportunity. It's not overwhelming. We're talking sometimes 100 vote difference, sometimes a 50 vote difference, determining which way a given local municipality or county goes in their elections. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to put out, this is from Saratoga County. I wasn't able to get good numbers that made sense to me from the websites that I could find for things in the Hudson Valley. So this is from Saratoga County. These are our top 10 employers. Of those top 10 employers, 3 of them are local government or school systems. They have a combined total budget of those 3 entities of $550 million. There's 9 board members for both of those school districts. There are 23 legislatures for that county. And between those 3 groups, they account for $550 million worth of spending in the communities. They account for over 4,000 employees and the hiring, firing, promotion, and retention of those employees. So it's a big deal. The local elections do make a difference. Okay, so now hopefully I've sold you all on that, right? Local campaign efforts, therefore, are going to make a difference. And it's often less about convincing. It really is less about convincing and more about finding the people who agree with you and making sure they know there's an election, right? We don't know about these elections. A lot of people are surprised. Whoa, there's a school board election. Whoa, there's a library budget. If you live in a village, you have off-timing elections, right? A lot of village elections in New York are in March. And if you're not read in on that or you're moving around a lot, you just don't know that. So a successful campaign can just remind those people and make sure they get to the polls. I'll say one well-organized project manager with a handful of motivated volunteers is all you need. You don't need thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't need slick marketing. You just need a few people who can do a few things. And we'll go over what some of those things are and translate it to project management to make sure you understand how effective you can be with very little other than your own personal skill set. All right. So a campaign is an organized course of action to achieve a goal. That is the definition, which sounds to me a lot like a project. It's got to start. It's got to finish. It's a set of activities that you do to achieve a goal. What is that goal? That goal is my candidate or my ballot measure gets enough votes that they get into office or it goes into the code or into the law, right? That's all a campaign is. It's just a project. And the terminology holds. If you are a good project manager, you can be a good campaign manager. You just have to translate a few things. Your sponsor, right? We all work for the sponsor. Well, if you're a campaign manager, you work for the candidate. or the ballot measure, the organization backing the ballot measure. And it's the same thing, right? Your job is to meet the objective. The candidate says, I want to get elected. All right, here's what we're going to do. The candidate says, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, like a good project manager, you've got to manage your sponsor. You got to say, hey, I really think you should, or you know what? Okay, we'll do something else. The sponsor says, I want to make sure that I do these 3 things. I want to make sure that every Friday evening I am photographed holding a new puppy every Friday evening. That's a hard stop. All right, your job is to figure out how to make that happen. Maybe you're like, hey, that might not be a good use of resources, but that's on you as a project manager to manage your sponsor. Your volunteers are your resources, right? This is going to take 20 hours of work effort. I have volunteers and I've got 20 hours of volunteer time this week. I can get it done. Hey, candidate, I need more resources. The sponsor may be able to go out and talk more people into volunteering, or they may put that back on you as project manager. Hey, go out to this group, go out to this person, right? It's the same thing. Money is money, right? You've got a budget. You got this much money. Money comes in, you spend it, money goes out. Schedule is schedule. Hey, we have to talk to this many voters by this date. This is election day. We need to make sure we have it done by this date. Constraints are constraints, assumptions are assumptions, risk are risk. It's the same. It is a project. If you have formal training in project management, you accidentally have formal training in campaign management. Congratulations. All right. Remember, 90% of what you do is communication related activities. You can track the progress yourself, or you can coordinate those who can, right? Hey, I don't have time to make sure people are knocking doors. I have this other person to make sure people are knocking doors. I don't have the time to make sure people are mailing letters. You make sure. You can plan the outreach, or you can coordinate the people who are going to do it. You can manage the legal requirements, the filings that have to happen, or you coordinate those who can. There are laws. You have to follow them. There's constraints on that. There's requirements. You find somebody that can meet those requirements for filings, and then you just make sure that it's happening. And like anything, you might do some of this yourself. You might do a little bit of all of this of yourself as a project manager, especially on smaller campaigns, right? You play the role of both the resource and the project manager. And it's all about balancing that out and making sure that you have enough people, enough resources, and enough money and enough time to do the things that you plan to do. Okay, so let's break it down by phases. Okay, the initiation phase for an election campaign. The candidate announces their intent to run. They develop a message, right? They form the initial campaign team. They see what are the high-level constraints and assumptions. Hey, this is a big issue this year. I'm going to run on this. Hey, the incumbent screwed this up. That's something we're going to campaign on. Hey, we've got to hit these major filings on these dates. Those are known. Those are set in stone. That's a charter. That's a charter right there. I am the candidate. Here's what I'm running on. Here's how I'm going to do it. These are the main dates we've got to hit. These are the big deliverables. This is how many votes I want to get. That's the charter. At some point in the creation of the charter, whether it's written down or it's just in the candidate's mind, the sponsor finds the project manager, right? That could be you. And I'll tell you my origin story later about how that happened for me and how I got into this in the first place. But it's all the same stuff. It's all okay, are we collecting requirements? Okay, do we have all the major milestones? Do our constraints make sense? Do our assumptions make sense? Do our final goals make sense? Right? If it's an election that tends to have a 5,000 voter turnout, what's our win number? Well, our win number is going to be 2,500 plus one. So we got to have that as the goal. And then you can update these things as you learn more, but that's the initiation phase. It's nothing you haven't done before with other projects. Okay. Then the planning phase. Okay. This is where a lot of project managers get caught up, and this is where a lot of campaign managers get caught up. I will also say this is where a lot of project managers wing it, and also a lot of campaign managers wing it. And you can get by with that, but it'll burn you. So you have to use the right level of granularity, and you have to use the right level of flexibility. It looks more like a waterfall than an agile because it does have those key dates and it does have the things you need to do. But when you suddenly find yourself with more money than you planned on or fewer volunteers, you have to make sure that you have some contingencies in there and you manage those risks. See, more project management. You got to manage those risks. You need to know your key dates. To get on the ballot, to get a ballot initiative or get a candidate on, there is some sort of petitioning process or nomination process that you have to follow. There are some filings that you have to make with some authority. You have to go out and you have to find those voters. Remember, I said 5,000 voters came out. How do I know that? That's publicly available information. For county and municipalities, your county's board of election has that information. It is publicly available. You probably don't even have to call somebody. It's probably on a website, or the local administrative offices of the school district, the library board, whatever. They will have that information. And they can also give you who are the voters. That is a legal record. You can't know how someone voted, but you can know that they did vote. You can know that the person living at 5 Main Street votes in every school board election. You can know that the person on 7 Main Street never votes in school board elections. So if you're running a school board campaign, that's a piece of information. You also can know their name and that they live there, so you can mail something to them. Or you can go up and say, hi, is Mr. Smith of 5 Main Street here? I'd like to introduce you to my candidate, or talk to you about my candidate, or talk to you about this issue, right? That's what you have to plan. How are you going to reach these people? Do I want to mail things? Do I want to knock on their door? Do I want to write a letter? Do I want to just put an advertisement in a newspaper and hope that it gets out there? This is all what we do in the planning phase, and you change it as as circumstances dictate. So then, so these are some key dates. Okay, when you're doing your plan, like I said, filings, expense filings, right? Campaign finance, it's a real thing. You got to get it right. In fact, for most general election campaigns, there's a requirement to have an independent person to make sure you get those right. So make sure you're following that. Make sure you know your submission deadlines for petitions. Make sure you know deadlines for advertising, right? You want to get an ad in a newspaper or something like that the week before the election. Well, if you wait until 2 weeks before the election to try that, you're probably going to be out of luck. So know those things. Know when absentee voting starts. Know when early voting starts. Know when election day is, right? It's easy to say, oh it's come out and vote. But a lot of people even aren't sure when the general election is. They have to be reminded. These are the voters that only vote once every 4 or once every 2 years. It's not natural to them. So you have to remind them. And we're talking about like a village trustee position. You absolutely have to know these dates and put it as part of your marketing strategy to get this information to the voters so that they will come out and vote. A couple of other things here, just be attentive to requirements when you're planning your literature. For some things, you have to save a copy of everything. Feel free to think outside the box, right? Very easy to just print stuff, pens, buttons, whatever. And what you will and what you won't write down. What's considered libel in some places or what's considered slander. It varies district by district. When in doubt, make sure you run all this by your candidate, because once again, they're the sponsor. Before you put words in their mouth, make sure the sponsor signs off on what you're putting out publicly. Okay, so now execution. I broke this up into 3 phases. Early phase, like I said, you follow the plan and change it as necessary. Basic project management. You're doing events, you're doing fundraising, you're making that swag, the stuff you're going to hand out. You're establishing a media presence, right? You're getting a Facebook page or an Instagram or whatever. You're gathering your volunteers. You're reaching out to initial sympathetic community groups. But remember, your volunteers are your resources. You want to get them on board early. Your sponsor, your candidate, is usually the strongest tool you have in getting volunteers. People are not volunteering for me. I'm not running for office. They're volunteering for my candidate, the person you want to see in office. They're going to get you those resources. And then do proper stakeholder management and make sure you scope out what they can and can't do. Keep a record. Remember, follow the plan and change it as necessary. Now you're canvassing, which is knocking door to door, just going out in the community. You're doing mailings, you're doing ads, you're doing more events or fundraising. You're coordinating your volunteers. You're scheduling public events. You're trying to debate your opponent. Or if that's a bad idea, you're trying to avoid debating the opponent. Whatever you have to do to make it work. This is the main execution phase. And then finally, the get out the vote phase. That's the end game. That's getting your voters to the polls. This is late. This would be actually what we're getting into right now with the general election. We, in about a week, a little over a week, early voting starts in New York. So now's the time to get the people that you went to the door and they said, I am absolutely going to vote for your candidate, to remind them to come out. And then the person who you went to the door and said, there is no way I'm ever going to vote for your candidate, hopefully they forgot there was even an election. You're using phone calls, you're knocking on doors, you're sending reminder texts, you're doing emails, you're checking the voter rolls and absentee returns. Once again, it's a record of whether someone has voted or not. So if you have absentee voters who have already submitted their ballot, check them off the list. Don't waste time. Move to the next one. This is all part of being an organized project manager. All right, so this is the phase we all hate, right? All project managers hate doing closing, and why not, right? The project's over. The campaign is the same way. There's a few things you have to do, right? There's final filings that you have to do, the samples of things you mailed out, depending on the laws. You have to submit that to the Board of Elections. You have to file whatever campaign finance requirements you have. But the election's over, right? Either one thing happened, the candidate won, great, done, on to the inauguration. Or the candidate lost. All right, we'll try again next year. Nobody wants to do closing. Do closing. Do lessons learned. Just even a little hot wash with all your core volunteers the week after the election, whether you won or lost, is a great time to learn. It's a great time to reinforce what did work. It's a great time to re-examine what did not work. And you often find little gems late in this, right? You're doing your final get out the vote phase. And right then you come across someone who just moved into the town, district, whatever, 2 weeks ago. And they're like, oh man, I didn't even realize this was up on the ballot. That's great. And they're super enthusiastic. And of course, you never had them as a volunteer because they just moved here. But if you do this again next year, maybe you want to reach out to them. Another big one, if your candidate made a campaign promise or they ran on a certain, platform of getting whatever done, you want to make sure you write that down, because if your candidate wants to stay in office for more than one term, as soon as they do that thing that they said they were going to do, you want to, as a good, campaign / project manager, cut that out of the newspaper and hold on to it. So when they run for re-election in 2 or 3 years, you can hand that out to voters and say, look, they did what they said they were going to do. That's what the power of the lessons learned, the power of the real closeout is. Just like every project you've ever worked on, a good closeout pays dividends, especially if it's a project that you're going to do again later or something similar later. Remember, there's at least 3 elections everywhere you go in New York State every year. So if you do this, you're going to do it again. Even if you're not the actual campaign manager, you're going to be a volunteer on another campaign, and you can bring those skills and knowledge to the table. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to go over some tools I've used, just so you understand how low the barrier is. You don't need $1 million to do this. You don't need, these high-powered, marketing consultants to do this. Real big trick, QR codes on clipboards. And once again, I have to call out and thank my good colleague, Eddie, for being on this. He actually introduced me to this. A QR code on a clipboard where somebody scans it and puts it into their phone to remind them to vote on their phone's calendar. Brilliant. Way to combat low voter turnout. You find somebody who says, yeah, I really do like your candidate, but you have no confidence that they're going to actually make it to the polls because they're in their mid 40s. They've lived in the town for 20 years. They've only come out to vote twice. Give them the QR code. Now it's at least in their phone, right? That's something. Google Maps and Google Sheets canvassing solutions. So if you run affiliated with a major party, and any major party in New York, they have tools that can be used. There's also things you can buy commercially that help you with general marketing campaigns that can be used for election campaigns. If you can get a volunteer or if you have the skills, you can get into Google Forms, Google Sheets, Google Maps, and you can build something that's almost as user-friendly and just as good, and in my personal opinion, more powerful because it's not relying on secondhand data from others. Use unique handouts. If you choose to do this 3 times, getting a button maker, a little button press, will pay for itself. Much cheaper than if you have 3 different candidates and 3 different campaigns who want to get a little metal clip-on button. I will say that clothing is expensive and risky, especially for smaller campaigns, because unlike a button or a pin or a bookmark, clothing is not one size fits all. And then if you have people ordering it as sort of a fundraiser, the fundraising piece of it is going to get eaten up in the margins of a t-shirt company that's making 3 larges, 15 mediums, 5 smalls, and 2 extra larges. It's probably not worth it. Having dedicated poll watchers on election day. This is a thing where you're going to reach out to resource groups, figure out what the laws are, but that helps you with the get out the vote because they can actually see, remember, it's a record, legal, public record that someone has voted. So if you had 50 people living in a neighborhood that you knew were going to vote for your candidate, and it's 4 p.m. on election day, and only 10 of them had voted, and then it's 5 p.m. on election day, and only 30 of them had voted. Well, now you've got 20 people for that poll watcher to text you and say, hey, we need to go remind these people to vote. Detachable door hangers. These are better than just palm cards if you're going door to door because you can hang them on the door, but if they have a little perforation on them, then you can just de-door hanger them and hand them out. Doing coordinated letters to the editor campaign. A lot of your volunteers really want to support your candidate, but they don't want to interact with people. They don't want to talk to people. They don't want to go door to door. They don't want to make phone calls. They don't want to text. Have them write a letter. Here we go. Voters are the one who votes. Okay. The leading predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And when I was younger and maybe a little more naive, like probably millions of people before me, I believed that this would be the year that I would turn the Grinch's heart and this person would come out to vote, even though they've never voted in a local race before. And overwhelmingly, that is wrong. You may change some minds, and you certainly should reach out to voters who are likely to be sympathetic and just need a little nudge to the polls. That said, don't count on it. The voter who votes in every election is going to vote in the next election. That person needs to be convinced. The person who never votes is probably not going to change for your candidate unless your candidate is the best thing since sliced bread. A good rule of thumb is 3 touches to get a sympathetic voter to the polls. Once again, this is a spectrum. The person who votes every election, you might just need to tell once. Someone else you might need to tell 5 times, right? What is a touch? It's any sort of interaction that motivates them to go to the polls. In the hierarchy, a conversation, whether that's going to the door or meeting them at an event or out in town, is always the best convincing thing, especially with these local elections, right? These aren't abstract people. These are real people that you're working for. Past that, a letter or a postcard, something personalized, something targeted, directed. Hey, Jill, I know you're a parent in this, the Wetumpka Falls School District, just like I am. Just wanted to make you aware of this school board race. That's the next best thing. Handwritten stuff tends to not go in the trash. People at least look at it. And then beyond that, a generic mailer. 90% of those generic mailers will go right into the recycle bin, but 10% of them will make a difference. And like I said, handwriting reduces the likelihood that things get tossed. Same thing with door hangers. It helps, but it takes time. So you have to make a decision as a project manager. Is this a valuable use of time? Time management is key. That's what we have to be good at. We're all professionals. Another good rule of thumb, 15 to 25 houses an hour when you're going door knocking. If they're closer together, if they're sidewalks, closer to 25. If they're more spread out, closer to 15. And realize that 3 hours of canvassing is not 3 hours. There's getting everybody together. There's handing out the literature that they're going to give. They're sending them out. They're coming back. Now we're going to move to a different neighborhood. They hop in their cars or whatever, move to a different neighborhood. So just be aware of that, right? It's an activity that takes, right, project management, an activity that takes 2 hours to do does not take 2 hours to accomplish, right? There's always setup and breakdown time. Choose your events to attend wisely. Some candidates want to go to everything. I'll tell you this. If your candidate is going to house parties and fundraisers, and it's their third one in 3 weeks, and you look around the room and you recognize every face in there, you are wasting your candidate's time. All of those people are already sold. They're at their third event for Susie Smith for mayor. They're voting Susie Smith. They're probably tapped out on donations. Do something else. Change what you're doing. Make it make sense. Remember that mail takes time. You mail it on Monday, it doesn't get there Tuesday. Remember, advertisements take time. You got to make copy, get copy approved, get the money, pay the advertiser, then get it up. Make sure you build those offsets into your schedules. Remember, your volunteers are your biggest resource, and remember that they are volunteers. Be real with them and make them be real with you. How much time can you give? Be real with yourself. If you were a volunteer, right? Be honest with your candidate. I can only do so much. Some candidates are very demanding. Most candidates who are very demanding do not pay for the entire demanding package. If they are, great, you're no longer a volunteer, but they're probably not. And you have to be honest with yourself and what you can do. And remember, you're going to get a ton of people in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s who are in for a general election, all about your candidate in April and May. And they're going to want, absolutely, I'll make phone calls, I'll knock doors, I'll write postcards. And then September happens. And now there's football and basketball and plays. And it's not their fault. But once again, be realistic with your volunteers. Make them be realistic with you and budget accordingly. All of this is publicly available information, right? The Board of Elections wants to help you. If you are running in a general election, because when you screw up, it makes their life harder. They will give you the dates. They will tell you the requirements. They will give you what you need to succeed. They will offer training. Same thing with district administrative offices. They want elections to be done right. Look to sympathetic organizations. Every county in the state has at least 2 active political party committees. And if it's a political race, your candidate probably falls into at least one of those camps. They have resources and knowledge to help you. There are community advocacy groups. Look to see who's endorsed people in the past. If there's a really great environmental group that consistently endorses candidates, and by the way, that comes with a $500 check and a few volunteers, maybe if your candidate has something that aligns with their list of objectives, reach out to them or tell your candidate to reach out to them. And remember, printing shops in your area do this. This is a business. They know the requirements. If you're not sure about what label needs to be on it or how it needs to be formatted to meet legal requirements, your print shop does, because they want repeat customers. So remember, You have the planning skills. You have the stakeholder management skills. You're a project manager. You can also be a campaign manager. The project is just a campaign and vice versa. All right. So I wanted to provide the confidence to help electoral efforts in your local community. So I'm going to tell you my little origin story yet, which is actually kind of Eddie's origin story in local stuff too. So I'm so glad he was able to join me. So 2017, I was a baby project manager. I just retired from the Navy, and we got involved in some local stuff. Me and my spouse at the time, and she's a very good presenter. Was a very good presenter, very good speaker. A lot of good ideas. A lot of people who were politically active in the community liked her, and they needed a candidate for a local office. And it was like, okay, you're the new kid in town, but you seem to have some good ideas and some good energy. Would you like to do this? And she says, well, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Great. We'll take care of the filings. We'll get you on the ballot. You just got to run your campaign, and it's on you to win. Okay. So the next group meeting we go to, she's there, I'm there. One of the more established bigwigs in the group goes to her and says, all right, great. You're going to be our candidate. Who's your project or who's your campaign manager? Who's your campaign manager? Because I need to talk to that person and make sure, they know some stuff. And she doesn't know. She's never done this before. So she kind of looks at me and she's like, well, I guess he'll be my campaign manager. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll be the campaign manager. I didn't know. I knew kind of what a political campaign was. But then I started talking with this gentleman, and I'm like, oh, this is a project. Okay, there's a timeline, get resources, lay it out. We definitely got some great volunteers. Eddie was the treasurer for that campaign. And we were both new to this, but we both have project management skills. We just said, hey, here's what has to be done. Here's what we have resource-wise to do it. And we did it. And I don't want to take credit away from her, but as the new kid on the block, she won. And like I said, 90% of that's her. Great candidate, great office holder, was very popular in her time in office. But we did it from nothing with project management skills, right? Eddie and I have both worked on under-resourced campaigns, under-financed campaigns. We've gone toe-to-toe with some pretty daunting entities in electoral competitions, and project management skills, being organized, wins the day. So everyone on this call, I guarantee you, if you didn't think you could run a campaign and make a difference in your community before, I hope you walk away from this knowing that you absolutely can. You absolutely can. The resources are out there. So I'm going to turn it over for question and answers. My information is, find me on LinkedIn. That's what everybody says now. If you want some information or you want some guidance, because you are looking at helping your buddy run for school board or county legislature or whatever in your local community, I'd be more than happy to help. Regardless of political affiliation, because I really believe that when we take it to people getting involved in their community, it's always going to work out better for the community, right? When everybody has the information, the best candidates and the best initiatives always win, right? So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jasmine as the host and take any questions or anything else anybody has.
Do we have any questions for Schaefer?
All right. Well, like I said, my name is Schaefer Gaston. I am pretty sure there's only one of me in North America. So find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out. If you have any questions or looking for more information, happy to provide. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thanks, Schaefer.
Sorry about that, guys. Thank you. I'll get you guys out in a second.
Actually, I have a question. This is Mirka. Um, if is the school board also work like you have to also be appointed and elected, right?
No, generally school boards are just elected. So the way most school districts in New York and actually the United States work is you have a school board, which is more of a governance thing, raising of taxes and a setting of budget. And then they will appoint administrators who actually do the day-to-day running of the district. So you'll have a school superintendent. They may also have a weigh in on other senior positions like other directors and principals. Um, that's the neat thing about it is there's always that direct elected oversight of the executive administration of the district.
Oh,
Did that
okay.
answer your question?
Yes, yes. Mhm. Yeah, because I feel more related when it's like the school thing than actually, like the district attorney, that kind of stuff. At least, the school, I can see the impact faster, that if we have enough police officer in the area, or if they actually fix the car, the road in my neighborhood, or that, like, if they clean the snow after this term, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know your municipality. I will say that so I live in Saratoga Springs, which is one of 12 municipalities in the US that still use what's called a commission form of government. So our city government is bonkers compared to most municipal governments in the United States. But that's really where it comes down to knowing your local government. Like, who is supposed to remove this snow? Is it a town thing? Is it a county thing? Is it a village thing? Knowing who's responsible is the first step to holding somebody accountable. And then if your public services are failing you, then that's a campaign issue. And somebody wants to step up and say, "Hey, I'm going to get this fixed." That's a campaign issue. But step one is knowing who's supposed to do that, right? Who's funding the police department, right? And it can be confusing depending on where you live, in what county and what municipality.
Yeah, that's right. That's probably a homework that I have to do to find out who is responsible for every little single thing that is important for me.
Yes, and unfortunately, you will often find that it's multiple people have a piece of it. So then it's a matter of kind of untangling the threads to see where you can make a difference.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Schaefer. That was very informative, and to quote Gary, mind blowing. Everyone, please go out and vote next month. Civil liberties are on the line. Our next meetings. Our new member orientation is coming up Tuesday, October 22nd from 6:30 to 7:30. If you are a new member, please make sure you register because you'll get some valuable information in our new member orientation. And we also have coming up, please save the date, our annual business meeting and year-end celebration, Thursday, December 12th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it'll be one PDU for Business Acronym. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. If you provided your PMI ID number at registration, then your PDU will be submitted automatically for you. Please allow 5 to 7 business days. Please contact me if you have any issues regarding your PDU. And again, thank you. My name is Jasmine T. Clark, and I am the VP of Professional Development. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Have a good night. Thank you, Schaefer.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, don't forget to look at the back of your ballots.